What really filled all of us on the continent with a huge sense of pride is the historic qualification to the semi-finals by Morocco. For the first time in the history of football on the African continent that an African nation has qualified for the semi-finals. So the successes serve as a very important inspiration, encouragement that what we've said over the last few months and starting last year, that an African nation will indeed, in the not too distant future, in fact, in the short term, compete at the highest level in the world and succeed.
We also look at how the progression of Moroccan football in general. I mean, like we mentioned, they're in the semi-finals of the World Cup. A female team, club team, beat a thunderous Mamelodi Sundowns women team. Of course, who've dominated in the CAF Women's Championship. They were in the final of WAFCON, where the Moroccan female team. So they are doing something, and it's a prototype that the rest of the continent can, if they bring aboard, you never know, we could have more successes as a continent.
I can't agree more with you. Like so many things in life, you reap the benefits dependent on the investment and the hard work and the sacrifices you make in relation to promoting and in this context football in your country. Morocco has over many years invested hugely and extensively in football for both boys and girls and in professional football. And I'm very proud because there are several other countries on the African continent that have also over the years been investing in football. And what you have to understand is even though we love football, football is at the heart of what we do, and we are passionate about football, but we also recognize that important role that football plays in improving the living conditions, help create jobs, and bring people together from different racial groups, different ethnic groups, different religious backgrounds. You know, when I was in Nigeria, they were saying to me that when the Super Eagles plays, there's no northerners and there's no southerners, and I didn't understand what northerners and southerners mean. But in essence, the whole country comes together, and part of the press conference today is to encourage all the 54 countries in Africa that are members of CAF to encourage their governments, to encourage the private sector as well, because it makes good business sense for businesses in all of these African countries to support football, and importantly to focus on investment in academies, in infrastructure and facilities for boys and girls. You know, the Motsepe Foundation donated $10 million to schools football in Africa. I am confident that, and of course, we've been privileged to work together in South Africa over the last 15 years with SAFA and with the Department of Education. The results will come true. It will come to the fore. And what will happen over time is that those nations and those countries that invest in their youth, in football, in the academies, football also goes hand in hand with education. They will reap the benefits.
President, we look at where we are now as a continent. We draw to a break, a couple of weeks. We start all over again in earnest early next year. The work that we've done throughout the year as CAF, are you happy with it? So you shall maybe look, maybe here and there's some things we could improve on. What have we learned?
Yeah, as I said, you've got to look at football in the context of its broader developmental upliftment role. But also, you know, we can't compete with Europe and America when it comes to technology, when it comes to investment, when it comes to financial resources. But on the football pitch, we have shown them we are as good as the best in the world. And we encourage young boys and girls to take the inspiration, the motivation from seeing an African football player, an African club, or even your national team competing at the highest level in the world. And you look at young boys and girls from Senegal, from Cameroon, from Morocco, South Africa, see their football players succeed, and they believe that if they succeed in football, I can also become a scientist, an engineer, a technologist. So the future for African football, the future for football in each of the 54 nations in Africa looks good and looks promising, looks bright.
We'll run out of time. One more, Mr. President, just maybe to look at the French. Congratulations to them. It would be a miss maybe to ask this question if I didn't. We look at those players in the French team, the African inspiration in that team, sir.
Yeah. Well, you feel proud to see players from the continent playing all over the world and doing well. Of course, we'd much rather have them play for our national teams, and that's one of the main reasons for the African Super League. We want to keep the brightest, most talented, most gifted African players in Africa, playing for their nations, playing for their clubs, but we've got to pay them well. We've got to compete, and that's why we are raising, getting sponsors, partners, investors, to make sure that we can really pay our players, our coaches, and those who are involved in African football, pay them very, very well, keep them in the continent. The benefit of that will result in the leagues in Africa, the football amongst our youth, and the national teams being even more successful. And my closing remarks were, at the next World Cup, there's about 10, maybe 15 countries, let me say 10, on the African continent that indeed in the next World Cup can go all the way. When you are in the finals, it's anybody's game. So the objective that we set ourselves, that an African nation must win the World Cup and be champions of the world, is within reach, and the future looks bright.
And with those words, thank you very much, Mr. President. Well, that's it from Sandton. Of course, the President of CAF, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, just wrapping up the year, as it were, as far as the Confederation of African Football is concerned.